You're listening to the On the Bounce podcast, the show that is the ultimate source for all MLS fantasy news, tips, and everything else you need to dominate your leagues. Me, I'm JK, and I'm joined as always by my two hosts, Brady and Jarvis. Together, us three make up On the Bounce, and we're here to give you the best advice we can, along with some pretty great entertainment. Now, with all this out the way, let's jump right into today's episode. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a very special episode of the On the Bounce podcast. This is episode number 17. Sorry if you guys, were waiting for our episode to drop yesterday on Tuesday, but listen, we're going to make it up to you. We thought it'd be better if we just recorded one big, spicy, fantasy jam-packed episode today, Wednesday, because it's another crazy MLS fantasy week. We got a bunch of double game weeks, a ton of games starting today, so we wanted to make sure we didn't miss it like last week. So all that to say, buckle up. Wherever you are, wherever you're listening, get ready for a nice, big, long fantasy podcast that you need to know. And, if you're at work, tell your boss to wank off, because you're going to listen to On the Bounce for the next 45 minutes.
Do not tell
so,
him wank off.
Yeah,
Do not.
No, literally, quote him. And if he says, "What are you on about?" just say, "That's what JK at On the Bounce told me to say." And he'll be like, "Oh, okay. I got it. He got the memo.
Good.
Trust me.
You're promoted.
He got the memo like Rodriguez." So we're back. It's all three of us. I'm your boy JK, or Joey. You know who else we got? Brady, Gravy the Gaffer. What's going on, bub? How you doing? You ready?
I'm doing great. I'm very ready, lads. I'm ready for a big double game week. Lots of points flowing. It's going to be a waterfall this week.
It's going to be actually fat with fantasy points. And speaking of fat with fantasy points, Josh Jarvis, how are you doing today, bub? You ready to drop hella points?
I need it after that last week, to be honest.
Yeah, last week was weird. We're going to get into that. So just quickly, let me break down how today's going to work. So, normally we give you the Tuesday episode, and that's like their weekly recap. It's nice and quick. We give you our winners and losers, hidden gems. And then on Friday, that's when we hit you with the key starters, the captain's choice, and some key matchups to look for. So today, it's the best of both worlds. We're going to try to keep it as short as possible, but it'll probably end up around, the 45-minute mark, maybe a bit longer depending on how in-depth we go. But we're going to kick it off like normal. We're going to hit you with the week 10 recap. We're going to give you a winner and a loser each, so not 2 or 3 winners and losers like normal. And then we are all three going to still give you hidden gems that you need to know. And then we're going to jump right in to key matchups of the week, key starters of the week for week 11, and the captain's choice. Because like we said, there's a ton of double game weeks this week. Kicking off tonight, that is Wednesday. There's 4 games on the slate tonight. You got Atlanta United versus Toronto, Columbus Crew versus the Galaxy, Chicago Fire versus the Revs, and the Red Bulls against Montreal Impact. So a lot going on this week. It's another thick week of fantasy. So buckle up once again, and we're going to jump right into it. So boys, it was a crazy week again in MLS Week 10. Kind of low scoring fantasy-wise. I think the average points was just around like 70, if I'm not wrong. Let me look really quick.
64?
Yeah, 65. So a low scoring week. So if you guys scored in the 70s, you did better than the average scorers. It was a lot of clean sheets, just a lot of weird people that aren't fantasy relevant that were scoring the goals. So what did you guys see in MLS Week 10 that kind of stuck out to you? Brady, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I was looking forward to a few of these games, such as the Seattle and Minnesota game. We were expecting this game to pop off and be fireworks. It was a 1-1 game. They're not much scoring. And then, we saw Philadelphia kind of jump into first place in the league and really, say what's up.
Go off.
Especially 6-1 victory over the Revs. That was crazy impressive. So it was an interesting week. The tables have turned in the East. And the West is still looking pretty strong, even though LAFC couldn't get the victory. But, crazy week.
Yeah, just like we called last week, we said that Seattle-Minnesota game should have been one of those, firework-esque games. And like Brady said, 1-1? What? But, Jarvis, what else did you see? Anything you want to add?
Portland got back to their winning ways of the past, so that's a big step for them. Real Salt Lake's a solid team, and I literally would have bet my life salary that the LAFC game would not have been 0-0. But
literally.
it was somehow, some way, it was 0-0, which was definitely the biggest shock of the week to me.
Yep, that definitely added to that average score in fantasy being so low because, you know, those two games we were talking about, LAFC, the Seattle game, we said you got to start a bunch of LAFC guys, start a bunch of Minnesota, start a bunch of Seattle because it's going to be high scoring. And, of course, those were the two low scoring games. But, you know, some other weird ones like Orlando got blanked. Montreal got blanked, and they're usually the ones keeping the clean sheet. They let NYCFC score 2. The Whitecaps scored 3. The Red Bulls scored 3. Philly, like Brady said, scored 6. DC got back to their winning ways. They scored 3. And Atlanta FC, all of a sudden coming back, they scored 3. So they've had a hot couple weeks in a row. They're stringing it back together. The bad news for them, though, their star boy, who's been, you know, keeping them up the last couple weeks, are the little starlet, not the star boy, but Barco. He's going to be gone on the U20 World Cup duty for the next month, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, another crazy MLS week, lots of goals and lots of clean sheets. So it's going to be another big week going into week 11, like we've been saying. Plenty of double game weeks to go around, plenty of good matchups coming up too. So, you know, it's going to be fun, and that's why we're giving you this big, thick episode full of fantasy goodness. So let's jump right into the fantasy segments. Like I said, this is going to be a little shorter on the recap end. So this, for the winners and losers, we're just going to give you one loser and one winner each. So Brady, kick it off. Who's your winner of the week?
All right, lads. I'm starting it off with a winner named Key Kamara, my man. This is one of my favorite players back. A lot of our favorite players back in the day. He made a very short stint on the FCC roster this season in the draft. But I love these massive 6'3 plus forwards. And even in his old age, Key Kamara has he's been a sneaky good player this year. He's in the top 10 in scoring among forwards. He's knocked in 7 goals. You don't really hear much about him because of the state of the winless Colorado Rapids. But my guy's been showing he's still a class player. And how about this week, knocking in the brace, 2 goals, getting a season high of 13 fantasy points against the Whitecaps. He's a standout this week. I'm loving it. This guy's an OG. Moving forward, we're going to need some more consistency, and we're going to need to see really consistency from his team, because I trust Key Kamara, I don't trust his team. So we're gonna throw him out here. He's only $200K more expensive than someone like Joseph Martinez, for example. But he's got 13 more points on the season. So don't forget about Key Kamara. This man could be a sneaky start moving forward. Granted that the Rapids get their act together.
Yeah, and like you said, he's had a couple good weeks this season, but the first game under their new coach, he does get a brace. So that's, that's good signs. Good signs. I like that pick a lot. Jarvis, who is your winner of the week?
So I'm going to go with Atlanta United as a whole, but more specifically Joseph Martinez and Ezequiel Barco, as they both absolutely showed out last week. Barco especially was able to get involved in so much of the attack, scoring and assisting, and then Martinez had the other 2 goals, and they needed it desperately. I mean, they both needed it so bad for confidence alone, but it's a big win. I mean, Sporting Kansas is a really, really good team, and it's definitely important for them to get that confidence going into Toronto and then Orlando and then a pretty long road stint. So they don't have the easiest road ahead, but I think we could see Atlanta pick back up and maybe put some more goals on the back of the net here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot too. Like I was saying in the little intro, Atlanta's been on a hot streak lately, and Joseph's turning it back around. He's starting to look like the old Joseph Martinez we all know. And yeah, Barco's been balling. We talked about him the last couple weeks in the hidden gems, key starters, and he's showing out. So definitely teams to watch, especially since they're one of the teams that played twice this week, and I'm sure we're going to talk about them later. So moving on to my winner of the week, that is big boy Jack Elliott. Now this is a guy I think I've been talking about in the last 2 or 3 episodes in a row. He was in my winners of the week a couple weeks ago, then he was in hidden gems, then he was in key starters, and if you had him last week on the double game week for Philly, he had a league high 17 points in fantasy, or a week high. So he was the overall MLS fantasy high score for last week. He put up 8 points in the first game against FCC. Then he put up 9 points in the 6-1 win against the Revs. He ended up scoring a goal, kept 1 clean sheet, almost got those 2 clean sheets that we were calling for, but it was still a great day overall for Jack Elliott and for Philly pretty much as a whole for that week. If you took our advice and you played Philly's backline, you got out feeling pretty good and you probably crushed it on your week for fantasy. So that is my big winner of the week, and that is all of our winners of the week. Brady, back to you. Started off with the losers of the week.
Hey, man. Right when you think Jomo is about to turn it back on, he just hurts you, and he just kills you. He burns you. This week against Minnesota, we expected this shootout. We talked about it. We expected 4-3, 5-4, some crazy shootout. But and especially since Rui Diaz really barely played in this game, we really expected Jomo. I threw him in my lineup immediately when Rui Diaz wasn't in the starting lineup, and this man only puts up 2 points. This is actually the 7th time this season that Jomo has put up 2 points. 7th. This man is pretty much untouchable in fantasy moving forward. He's not worth the risk. He's completely goal dependent, and his floor is basically 0 points. His ceiling, he's put up more than 10 twice, but I mean, that was within the first 3 games of the year. This man's ice cold right now. I'm not touching him for the rest of the year, or at least until we see some consistency out of my guy Jomo. So, big loser this week, Jomo.
Yep, it's sad and it's a trend. He's been in the losers category a couple weeks now, and like Brady just said, it's because that he is so goal dependent. If he scores a goal, he gets them in bunches, but boy, when he doesn't, he does nothing else on offense to help you in fantasy. So it's sad, but Jomo definitely, I'm with Brady. He's looking untouchable for now, especially with that hefty price tag. Jarvis, over to you. Who is your loser of the week?
So my loser of the week is going to be Captain Carlos Vela.
Sad. Blaspheme.
It truthfully is. But somehow, some way, the Chicago Fire held him scoreless, and all of LAFC scoreless in Week 10. He ended up with 5 fantasy points, which isn't like the worst for a shutout, but still, you're definitely hoping for more whenever you're paying, $14.4 million, which was $14.8 million, I believe, last week for him. But not anything to be too terribly worried about. They play Columbus Crew this week, and then in Week 12 they have a double game week, both against FC Dallas, which is very odd. But but yeah, nothing to be too terribly worried about. Just a bad week for LAFC and for Carlos Vela. But don't sell him, boys. Don't freak out too much. Keep him in that lineup. Keep the captain's ban on him. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, he's like a Pozo. If that's his bad week, you'll be all right. Like,
Exactly.
I think all the way
5.
back... Yeah, I think all the way back in, like, our second ever episode, Brady talked about him because Vela had a really rough week 1, but he's still stuffing the stat sheet. Like, he's still doing Carlos Vela things. He was just not on the score sheet and not getting the assists. But there's no worry anytime soon. So, moving on to the last loser of the week, that is Daniel Lovitz, the defender from Montreal Impact. Now, this is another team that we got wrong last week. We said Montreal Impact going up against NYCFC. Montreal's defense has been on fire. We were calling for at least close to a clean sheet, maybe just 1 goal. But Montreal lost 2-0. Daniel Lovitz got the -1 for the 2 goals conceded, and then he got a stupid yellow card, and he lost another point. So he finished the day with 1 fantasy point, and you ended up spending close to $8 million on him. So not a good day for Daniel Lovitz, not a good day for Montreal's defense as a whole, but I think this week they can bounce back. They do play a double game week again, and they got 2 pretty good matchups. We're probably going to talk on them later, but I'm not too scared of Montreal's defense, especially guys like Lovitz, who usually get involved more in the attack. He's got 2 assists on the season. He's got a couple bonus points, still averaging close to 5.5 points on the year. So I'm not too scared about him. Just had a terrible game with 1 point. So that does it for our losers of the week and our winners of the week. And now we're going to hop right into the Hidden Gem segment. So this is our favorite segment where we give you guys that are flying under the radar, going for cheap, and could definitely make you some bank in MLS fantasy. So we're going to hit you with just one quick hidden gem, the cream of the crop. Brady, kick it off. Who you got?
So this week, for my hidden gem, I'm going with a rare name alert. We got Fafa Picault.
Fafa Picault?
Papa Picault is about is about to enter the fold. My guy is on the
my
red-hot
God.
Philly Union, and they had a great week this week. They did have the double game week, and they were knocking in goals left and right. This man's the backup forward on this team, and he scored 10 points over those 2 matches, and he only played 64 and 74 minutes in these games. So he's been playing a substitute role for most of the year. He hasn't really taken advantage of it thus far, but this might be a jump-off point for my guy, because he started the year with some hype. He was at $8 million value, and he's all the way down to $4.9 million this last week before popping off this week. And this week he jumped up to about $5.1 million. So, I'd be willing to take a chance on this man. He's a bench play, no risk, high reward. If this man can get in there and Philly keeps knocking in these goals and playing like they have been, I knock him in there and on your bench, and let the value fly at the least, and then maybe pop him in your starter if you're feeling frisky, and get a hidden gem nuclear week from my guy Papa Pico.
Are you telling me to pop Papa Pico in my lineup?
I'm telling you, Papa Pico.
How many
in your
pickled
lineup.
peppers did he pick is my question. A few? Anyway, I do like that pick, though. Quick little segue off of the Papa Pico for Fafa Picault. This man's name's legendary. His hidden gem value is legendary. I dig it. And like Brady said, Philly's on a hot streak, and I don't see it slowing down too much. You get momentum in soccer. That's a sport that you can just keep carrying that momentum.
True.
So I like that pick. Jarvis, over to you. Who is your hidden gem this week?
So speaking of momentum, I am going to go with Nick Lima, who's a defender for San Jose Earthquakes. The past 2 weeks, they've had a clean sheet. Last week against FCC, he had 13 points. The week before that against FC Dallas, he had 7. And he's someone else who he had been in the starting lineup, but he was someone who was getting subbed out in the 60th pretty much consistently. And then they benched him. He brought him in off the bench for a few weeks, and then he found his way back into the starting lineup. But, their defense has been playing absolutely stellar with him out there. And he's only going for $5.1 million, so I would strongly say even if you don't want to start him, put him on your bench because he's going to make you some money in these next couple of weeks. They have the New England and then Chicago. And like you guys were talking about, whenever you have momentum, you can carry it. And they've been playing so well defensively this past couple of weeks. It would certainly shock me if his value didn't skyrocket up in week 11 and 12.
Yeah, and those are 2 good matchups for 2 pretty decent opportunities for clean sheets. At least the Rev. That's a pretty good opportunity for sure. So I like that pick. The defender hidden gems we've been hitting you guys with all year have been solid investments at the least. And we're going to continue that trim right here with my hidden gem of the week. That is goalkeeper for the Toronto FC, Quentin Westberg. So, Toronto, we've been talking about them all season as an offensive powerhouse. They haven't really been great defensively. They've only had 1 clean sheet on the season, and Quentin was not, 2 clean sheets on the season. 1 was back in week 5, and 1 was this previous week, week 10. Now, there's something of a goalkeeper battle brewing up north in Toronto, and from what I read this morning, Quentin Westberg is the clear favorite to win that battle starting this week. So he's only going for $4.8 million right now. He's played 3 games on the season, and last week was his best, keeping a clean sheet against Orlando, making good saves, getting some passes out there, and he had a nice bonus defending point in fantasy because he was all over the box like a sweeper keeper, picking up loose balls, getting out of the box, making long-range passes. So the reason he's a hidden gem, not only because he could become the starting keeper and is looking like he's going to be the starting keeper, he's $4.8 million, and Toronto's in a double game week this week. Now, neither one is great for clean sheet bonuses. I will keep it real with you there. They play Atlanta in Atlanta and then Philly back at home in Toronto. Both 2 teams that are pretty hot and both 2 teams that have been scoring lots of goals recently. But he's a perfect option, so cheap to throw in your bench as your keeper-roo option since he plays 2 games this week. If they end up getting a clean sheet against Atlanta, that's an automatic keeper-roo to do. It's going to save you so much money and could absolutely go off the deep end with those 2 games this week. So that is my hidden gem, Quentin Westberg. All right, word, under $5 million. You got to snag him. So there's the 3 hidden gems, the cream of the crop this week from you guys, or for you guys, and from us. So that's pretty much the Week 10 wrap-up. We did that in pretty good time, boys. We're making great. We're not wasting any of our listeners' times because, On the Bounce is all
We're
about
ready.
giving you everything you need and more.
True.
So now jumping right into this week, the big week, Week 11. We're going to give you our matchups of the week, the key starters, and the captain's log. And real quick before we get into it, if you guys are new to MLS Fantasy and you're listening to us, or you're not really too into MLS Fantasy, when we talk about these double game weeks, these are just such great opportunity to really just increase your fantasy points like crazy. So this week we got 4 games on Wednesday, and all 8 of those teams play twice. So even if you're getting guys on these teams that are only averaging around 4 or 5 points, they're going to end up getting you around 8 to 10 because they're playing twice. So overall, when you have weeks like this where there's this many teams, you got to play as many as you can. And that's why we're doing this special episode out of nowhere, because we got to tell you who you need to start playing tonight in tonight's games. So we're going to kick it off with a little bit of the matchups of the week, some key fantasy games to look out for. And Brady, what is your key matchup of the week?
All right, lads. I'm looking at some shutout potential with my pick this week, just like I did last week. I'm looking at my Montreal lads with a double game week this week for Montreal. We've got them matched up, as Joey was saying earlier, with the Red Bulls and FCC. Now, the Red Bulls have been shut out 3 times this season and held to just 1 point 3 times as well. And they're not going to be a pushover, but this is some solid shutout potential in the first game. And then FCC, with the recent firing of Alan Koch, it's been rough. We'll see if FCC can turn it around, get some momentum, break duck, and knock in some goals, or if they're going to continue to struggle and extend their goalless drought to 6 games, which hurts to say as an FCC fan. But I'm liking Montreal and FCC this week as my matchup of the week, because I'm throwing a bunch of Montreal defenders into my lineup. As you were saying earlier, I'm loving the Montreal boys. I'm going to elaborate on them a little bit more later, but these are my lads. I'm throwing some Montreal guys in. That's a good matchup.
Yeah, we've been hot on them for the last couple weeks now. Brady called them out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's when they started really getting hot. He was on it early, and I like it this week again. I think they had that they had that crazy double game week like 2 or 3 weeks ago when like 10 teams were playing, and that's when they just like went nuclear. Yep, so could happen again this week. I definitely like Montreal in this a lot. They got 2 pretty good matchups, so I'm down with that. Jarvis, over to you. Who is your key matchup of the week?
So for my key matchup, I'm going with Chicago versus New England. And the biggest reason I think is Chicago has found themselves with having a bit of a goal drought, kind of like FCC, but not anywhere near as severe. And New England has had 1 single shutout this entire year. And the past 2 games, they gave up 10 goals. In the game before that, they gave up 3. So their defense is playing absolutely god-awful. And I'll expand into the Chicago thing a little bit later because I have one of my key players from Chicago this week. But I think it's a perfect storm for them. I think a few of the Chicago guys are going to be able to get some playing time more consistently than they've seen the past few weeks, and I think they're going to take advantage of it. I think New England's defense is so bad that it's not going to matter, and it's going to be a big confidence booster for Chicago. And they've got to be feeling good coming out of LA with a point from last week. So I think that Chicago could definitely be due for a clean sheet. New England's offense isn't too great either, and I certainly think Chicago's going to be putting some goals in.
Yep, I'm glad you called that as one of your fantasy matchups of the week. When I was looking at the script, I was hoping one of us did, because just like you were saying, they held LAFC not only scoreless, but they got that point out of that, and they haven't been that great of a team on the season and in fantasy, but I'm right there with you. I think this is the week where they really start banging in goals. They start doing a lot of good stuff, especially in fantasy, and I love it because they're one of the only teams that have these double game weeks that they're at home for both of them. They don't have to travel on short notice. They don't have to do anything. They get to chill in Chicago and let 2 not great teams come into Chicago, the Revs and Montreal. Minnesota. So I'm liking the Chicago Fire this week a lot. And I see on our script we got some boys we're going to talk about, so it's going to be fun. So moving on to the last matchup of the week. That is my matchup, and it is Atlanta United versus Toronto. The first game of the week tonight, as you guys are listening, 7 p.m. in Atlanta. I hope I'm not wrong again. And we've admitted we were wrong earlier in the show, but I think this could be another kind of decently high-scoring game. Like I said earlier, Atlanta is going to be missing Barco. He left early Monday morning to go down to Argentina to meet up with the U20s because he is going to be in the U20 World Cup. So we'll see how they do without him. Ever since they switched and ditched that 3-4-3 formation that they were trying to do in the beginning, he's been the key man, really just running the midfield, creating a bunch of chances for them, and getting him and Joseph back in goal-scoring, mentality. So we'll see how they can do without him. I still think Joseph is going to be on such a hot start that he's going to be good for a goal, but I really think Toronto FC is going to come in here and just try to score a ton of goals like normal. Especially if that big boy, Josie Altidore, comes back from injury. He's missed the last 2 weeks. He's looking like they said he's questionable for Wednesday, and he should be ready to go by Saturday. So we'll see if they rush him back early. But I think that game could end up being like a 3-1, 4-2 type of game. A lot of goals in the dome of Atlanta. So I'm liking that to be a nice shootout to start off the double game week tonight at 7. So that is my fantasy matchup of the week, and that is all of our fantasy matchups of the week. If you agreed with it, or if you agreed or disagree with anything we've said so far in the show, be sure to hit us up over on Twitter at OTBounce. Let us know your feelings, and we'll shoot you a spicy response back. Trust us, you'll want it. So moving right in to the big segment of the week, that is the key starters. We're still hitting you with all 3 of them. So each of us are going to give you 3 guys we think you got to have in your fantasy lineup this week on a very important double game week, and why. So I'm going to switch it up, rotate it around a little bit, make sure everybody's still listening to us 30 minutes into the podcast. Jarvis, kick it off. Who is your first key starter?
So for my first key starter, I'm going with Nemanja Nikolic, a big forward for the Chicago Fire. So he has had a pretty rough season. He has scored 3 times, but even in those 3 games where he scored, he only had 6 points, 8 points, and 7 points. And in literally every other game, he has like 2 points. And he pretty much gets subbed out in like the 65th, 70th every game. So not fantastic for Nikolic. But this week, like I was saying earlier, I think they do have 2 solid matchups, but the first one's really, really nice. And CJ Sapong, their other forward, is questionable for this coming up game. So it certainly wouldn't shock me if they just hold him off, especially because they have 2 games this week. So Nikolic's really going to be their only source of attack. And I truthfully believe Chicago is going to score at least 1, probably 2 on New England, if not more. And I don't see any other way that it comes but through Nikolic. He's still an extremely talented forward. He's just had a bit of an unfortunate go out of this year, and his team's not fantastic either, so it's certainly not all on him. But he's at $7.8 million. I think that's you're going to get a really good value out of him this week.
I like the Chicago pick a lot. Like you said, he's not been the greatest this season, and I don't know if they got him on a minute restriction or what, or if his age is finally kind of catching up to him. But he's been lethal in MLS before. He's kind of on that. Maybe not as in a big a slump as BWP, but he's on that level of like maybe age is finally catching up to him. And the only thing I don't agree with you, and I'm going to switch it up, I told you I'm reversing it. I'm going with my key starter next, is because I do think they're going to score goals, and it could come through him, but also it's big Nico Gaetan, the Argentine that they brought in just maybe not a couple weeks ago, but earlier in the season. It was a big DP signing they made for the MLS. He hasn't had too much of an impact. He had his one big breakout week back in week 8 when he finally played his first full 90 and he scored 13 points. He's yet to score a goal in MLS, but he's racked up assists. He's had a couple shots on target. And the good news is he's still averaging 5.3 points per 90 when he plays. So the last 2 weeks, he's ended up playing the full 90. And I think over this double game week, he's just going to finally have his MLS kind of big announcement party. Like, I've arrived, lads. I'm up here. I shouldn't be in MLS, but maybe I should because I'm in my 30s, and this is what everyone does from Europe. So I'm liking Nico, the 31-year-old, to start scoring MLS goals this week. Like I said, Chicago's got 2 great matchups, at home against the Revs, and then at home again against Minnesota, the Loons. So I'm liking Nico to start scoring his MLS account. open it up, drop in 2 goals this week. He's $8.5 million, but he's playing 2 games, so that's a bargain. I'm liking him really to do something. He's at least opening his account, getting 1, but I'm thinking he's going to drop 2.
I'm smelling a bettable between you two lads. What do you think?
On which one will be better this week?
Nikolic versus Gaitan. Who's putting up more points?
Oh, I'm very down.
Yeah, I'm definitely down.
All right, lads.
All right, is it simply on just who's scoring more?
Who's scoring
Just
more?
in fantasy,
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in on that.
It's
All
a
right.
bowl.
I like it. There you go, boys out there. If you're listening, a bettable's been made. Nico Gaitan versus Nemanja Nikolic. Who's going to be scoring more this week in fantasy? And if you're new, if you don't know what a bettable is, it's simple. We just make a bet, and whoever loses has to give the winner a fresh, cold nectar of the
Crisp.
god Red Bull. Nothing better, especially when you're getting it off of a man who lost a bet to you. So I'm liking it. Nico Gaitan versus Nemanja. Who's going to be scoring more for the Fire? It's going to be close. I'm liking it. All right, Brady, over to you. Who is your first key starter for this week?
All right, lads. I hope y'all like Wendy's because I'm giving you a 4-for-4 special with my defender picks. I'm giving you some options this week with my Montreal lads that I mentioned earlier. I'm loving these matchups. I'm gonna go over it quickly. I already mentioned a little bit, so I'm gonna speed through this. But the Red Bulls are the first matchup this week for Montreal. Solid matchup, big time shutout potential, and then FCC coming up after that. Huge shutout potential. We'll see if FCC can turn it around. But these are the boys that I'm looking at on Montreal to throw in my lineup. I'm loving my guy Daniel Lovitz. This is a guy who's been on fire this season. His 3-week average is 7.3 points per game. He's only 7.3 mil. Good value. A little bit expensive for a defender, but I think he's worth it. He puts up those points consistently, and he's got a huge ceiling. Next, if you're getting frisky, I'm feeling Zakaria Diallo, the most expensive defender on Montreal, but this man is also extremely solid, averaging 5.9 points per game, very consistent, high floor, not as high a ceiling as my guy Lovitz, but I'm loving this man as well. And then there's Evan Bush, the goalkeeper. My guy is leading the MLS with 5 clean sheets this season. 5, count them 5, lads. And guess what? The last time they did double game week, my guy snacked 2 clean sheets in that double game week and went absolutely nuclear. And then if you're going for a little bit of a budget call, maybe let's go with Victor Cabrera, the cheaper defender on Montreal. My guy's put up 42 points this season. He's only 6 mil, and he's averaging 6.9 points per 90. So when this man gets on the field, he makes it count. I'm loving these 4. It's a Wendy's 4-for-4 special from your lad.
I love it. We were talking about him all episode. Just like Brady did a couple weeks ago on the big double game week. He's calling for him again, and I'm liking it. They got good matchups. You can't deny it. Just like he said, the Bushmaster and his front line in front of him. They're going to be keeping clean sheets.
I forgot my nickname for him, the Bushmaster.
They got woken up in that big 7-1 loss they got early in the season, and ever since then they've turned into a fortress. So I like it a lot. Back over to you, Jarvis. Who is your next key starter for the week?
So for the next one, I'm going to go with Nick DeLeon. I'm going to steal Brady's sauce on this one.
My lad.
He's just been playing so well, and so is Toronto. Just really all year since we've been telling you about him. He is going for a pricey $7 million, but when he's been playing the way he has, and when Toronto's been playing the way they have, it's honestly a safe bet. Now they don't have the greatest matchups. They are at Atlanta and then versus Philly, but I think they could shock some people versus Philly, especially at home. I don't expect Philly to score much in this game, and I don't know if I want to say maybe a clean sheet, but it wouldn't shock me if it happened. So, I think the points he's going to score between these 2 games is going to be enough to carry him, and he can also get a cheeky assist every now and then. So, I'm definitely starting Nick DeLeon this week, and I'm expecting big things out of him this second game of the week.
Yeah, and the reason that Brady's talked about him, and we've talked about him 100 times this season, is simply because he's a guy like Shea Salinas. Besides, he's the OG Shea Salinas. The man has yet to play defense all season.
Right.
He's played left wing. He's played 10 before they got Pozo. But, he's played all up in a 10s. attack, not I just mixed attack and defense together. What of it? A tense. That's his new role.
That's his
Nick
role.
Nick DeLeon plays a tense from now
wordsmith,
on, lads.
Jilly
So good.
But anyway, Nick DeLeon's never a bad option, especially on double game weeks. Just like Jarvis said, he can get assists, he can get on the goal sheet, he can score. It's all around good stuff. And if they do end up with a clean sheet, he's going nuclear regardless because of that extra 6-point bonus.
Yep.
It's huge. So moving on and staying in that in the 6 with the Toronto boys, you should already know. We're talking about key starters, and I'm up to bat. You know who I'm talking about. Alejandro Pozuelo. Big Pozo. The man has been tearing up MLS ever since he came in here, and I sound like a broken record player, but that's because he won't stop. He's still averaging above 12 points a game, which is just, outrageous. He's had 2, quote, bad weeks in a row where he scored 6, which is his season low, and then 9 last week. So, if 9 and 6 are your bad weeks and this man's on a double game
Sign
week,
me up.
you can imagine what he's going to end up scoring. So he's going for $13 million, which is like Carlos Vela money, Ibra money, but this man is on their level, especially in fantasy. Like I said, averaging 12 points a game, playing 2 games this week. You throw that together, and he's going to get you 20 plus minimum on a double game week. And then, if you slap that captain armband on him, there's a solid 40 points for you. So Pozo, definitely a key starter of the week. Playing against Atlanta, playing against Philly at home. I think he's in for another just good week, especially with 2 games. Brady, back over to you. Who is your next key starter?
Hey, man, we're staying in the 6th for the 3rd straight person. How about Michael Bradley this week? If you don't have enough budget to go out and grab Pozo, who I definitely suggest over Michael Bradley, but if maybe you made your lineup and you're trying to fit in a midfielder and you don't quite have enough for these big names like Pozo, throw in Michael Bradley, man. This guy has a really high floor. He's only 10.1 mil, almost 4 million cheaper than my guy Pozo. He's averaging 7.3 points per game. He's just solid. He can get you 12 points. He's gotten at least 11 3 times this season. And the lowest he's got is 4, which he's only hitting once. Every other game, he's getting 5, 6, 5, 6. This guy's a consistent player. He's always going to rack up those bonus points. And then when he gets goals and assists, it's just extra. And he puts up great numbers. With the double game week, I'm feeling like he could actually pop off and have a really good week. I'm liking Michael Bradley this week. This is my guy. I'm starting him.
I'm right there with you for every reason you said. He's a cheaper Pozo, and he's an all-around player. He gets those bonus points in defense. He gets them in offense, so I love it a lot. We like Toronto this week, boys, if you didn't know. Jarvis, over to you. Who is your 3rd and final starter of the week?
So my last starter is going to be Jonathan Dos Santos, midfielder for LA Galaxy. You know him. You love him.
Yes.
He's been playing out of his mind these past month. 13, 11, 6, and then 5 last week with a rough game of the Red Bulls, but nothing too bad. And they have 2 really good matchups this week, in my estimate, at Columbus, who's been struggling pretty bad these past month or 2, and then at home versus New York City FC, who also haven't been playing their best. And thank God they don't have to go to Yankee Stadium, because that would be the worst for fantasy. I can't ever play anyone whenever they're playing there simply because the field's that bad. But, yeah, I mean, you guys know who he is. He's been playing out of his mind. He's going to score fantasy points in both of these games, and he is going pricey. And I know we usually talk against pricey midfielders, but I think he's going to be worth it this week. I mean, I can't see him getting any lower than 16 total for the week, 17, literally at the lowest. I imagine, I would be willing to bet he's going to at least get you 20, but 15, 16 at the very lowest. So he's definitely someone I'm starting this week.
Yeah, and all the midfielders we've given you in this segment, like Jarvis said, we've been against some of the high pricey ones, but that's because they're not consistent. Everyone we've mentioned so far is consistently getting much more than the 5 that we've been talking about points per game. JDS is averaging almost 8, and the reason that we love him is his bonus points are outrageous. He had 6 bonus points 2 weeks ago, 6 bonus points 3 weeks ago, and last week, Jarvis said he only scored 5, but he ended up with 3 bonus points again to get up there. So when he ends up scoring those goals and the assists, he just goes absolutely bonkers. I love him this week. That's a great pick. He's in my lineup. So moving on to me for my last pick of the week, it's another Toronto guy. We're loving Toronto this week. You got to go in on these double game week guys, especially when you got great teams like Toronto. And that is big boy Josie Altidore. Now, I mentioned it earlier. He is injured. He's missed the last 2 weeks with I think a muscle injury. And he's 11.6 million, which is hefty, but boy, the games he's played this season, he's on fire. He hasn't even hit 400 minutes total, and he scored 5 goals, 2 assists, and he's averaging 9.2 points a game and 11 points per 90 when he plays it. So it's ignorant. If he definitely... Make sure you check your lineup tonight as you're listening. They play the early game at 7, so around 6 o'clock, go over to our Twitter on the bounce or Toronto FC's Twitter around 6. Make sure he's in the lineup. Coach said he's questionable for Wednesday night's game, but he's likely for Saturday. So if you are gambling it, and if you like that matchup against Philly, still, you can put him in your lineup just for the one game. But man, if he's playing Wednesday night, I'm all in on Josie because that double game week is going to hit different. And if he's not in the lineup, and if Jordan Hamilton, the backup striker, is starting Wednesday night, definitely not a bad option again, even if Josie plays later Saturday, because he might not play the full 90 if he doesn't play Wednesday, and Jordan Hamilton's a cheap option. So there are 2 more Toronto boys for you this week in the double game week fantasy. Brady, over to you. Close us out. Who is the last key starter for you?
All right, lads. Quickly, I think Josie Altidore missed his calling to be a linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah.
But moving on to my last starter this week, lads, we're going with Joseph Martinez. What? The forgotten man. I understand the struggles that ATL has had this season, and I realize that there's a lot of great options for captain this week, but this man Joseph showed out last week and is looking to regain his 2018 form where he absolutely decimated the MLS with a league-high 31 goals and led all of MLS fantasy in scoring. Coming this season, this was what Carlos Vela is right now. This was the hype that was surrounding Joseph Martinez playing at such a high level. Maybe even more hyped, but listen. Last week, Martinez knocked in 2 goals, got the brace, and he totaled in 14 fantasy points, almost doubling his previous top-scoring match this season. So, I mean, we've seen where his ceiling is, and I mean, it's pretty much higher than anyone else in the MLS, especially, anyone on his team. This is an automatic start for me this week. The double game week against Orlando and Toronto. 2 good, not great defenses, definitely vulnerable and can give up some goals. If you're feeling risky and you're feeling it, I'm saying throw in Martinez and slap that armband on him as well. This is my captain's choice for the week, lads. Joseph Martinez, starter of the week, captain of the week. I'm feeling it this week. My guy, Joseph.
I like it because he is on fire. ATL as a whole is on fire. And just like I mentioned with Chicago earlier, Atlanta is the other team that plays both games at home this week. So that's a big advantage. And we know that Mercedes-Benz Stadium goes nuts. It's insane. Another good
fans.
Another good bonus point for ATL and Joseph this week is they actually have an extra day of rest. They play Wednesday and then they don't play again until Sunday. So that's big on double game weeks when you don't have to travel and you get an extra 24 hours just to kind of recover. So I'm liking Joseph. A big captain's choice of the week too. So let's segue right into the captain's choice of the week.
Okay.
You got Brady's for every reason why, and I'm going to hit mine quickly because it's Pozo. For every reason I told you earlier. He's averaging something stupid, 12 points a game. He plays twice this week, 2 good matchups.
It's
Literally
easy.
Don't think about it. Captain him, Captain Martinez, and
him.
Captain whoever Josh Jarvis is about to tell you. Jarvis, who's your captain's choice of the week?
So I'm going to go with the guy I've been sticking with for a while. Big Ibrahimovic showed out last week. Had 13, 26 if you slap that armband on him. And this week, double game week at Columbus and then versus NYCFC are both two great matchups for him. So yeah, certainly obvious why I'm picking him. But another quick note, Columbus also plays both games at home this week, but they play both LA teams. So that's rough. That's extremely rough. So maybe don't start Columbus defenders no matter how tempting it seems, because they have to play Vela and Ibrahimovic.
Yeah, speaking of a team that went from best to worst randomly, we were talking about them every week. We were talking about Zardes. We were talking about the defense.
Gaston.
What happened to Gaston Soro? That man disappeared. Everyone.
Zach Steffen.
Steffen. And now we're telling you they got 2 home games on a double game week and don't play them because they got to play 2 big boys and they're not playing too well. But yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I was hoping we talked about Ibra because LA plays twice this week. You definitely got to have him in your lineup. Definitely a great captain's choice. So that will do it for our fantasy huge episode. Not too long. I told you it'd be around 45 minutes, and we kind of hit the nail on the head. So that is everything you need to know for this big double game week. Like I was saying earlier, you got to make sure you have as many people as you can in these double game weeks. You can't miss out on these extra points, even if it's guys who don't produce that much on an average. Trust me, you got to do it. I did it the other week when there was 10. We all did it, and we all had such big scores. So you got to do it. Take our advice. If you noticed, every single key starter we listed plays twice this week. So you could build a nice starting 11 from our boys. Maybe not all the Toronto guys, because you can only have 3 from one team, but we'll keep that on the DL. Yeah, exactly. So that'll do it for us. Anything else in the closing little outro moments before we go, boys? Anything you want to talk about or bring up?
Koch out?
Koch out.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah, this morning, as we're recording this, shout out to our guys over at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. They broke the story a little bit before FCC did, and, if you guys are new around here, I'm sure you're not, but if you're listening, we've always talked about our love for FC Cincinnati. That's our hometown club. We're all from Cincinnati. We've been rooting for them since day one back in the USL, and this morning we got the news that Alan Koch had been relieved of his duties. Whew. So we've talked about it. You guys know if you're listening to the show, you're obviously fans of MLS. FCC has not scored in some ignorant, 500-something minutes. They haven't scored in 6 games. Yeah, they didn't score all of March. And the only goal they had before that was a penalty. So it's been rough. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on it? You want to quickly tell us, what's your thoughts? You like it? You hate it? Why?
I'm ready for Koch out. The man filled in when we had to relieve John Harkes of his duty in the USL. He was never had any head coaching experience at the USL or MLS level. I mean, he was an interim coach that did pretty well for us. He led us on an awesome USL Cup run, but he's obviously just not at the level of coach that we need in the MLS right now. And shout out to Alan Koch for being a GOAT and having some good times in the USL, but when it came down to it, this man just wasn't a good enough coach, and it's time to move on and start the new era of the MLS FCC. Just like we got rid of our USL players in the past, or most of them, it's time to shed the rest of the USL guys and move on to some professionals.
Exactly. Jarvis, any other thoughts?
Pretty much agree. Sad but true. It had to happen.
Yeah, professional sports and most professional workplaces, it's not a charity. This morning, or when President Jeff Birding was doing his little press conference, he said, it wasn't all because of the results. They said they weren't really building the locker room atmosphere they wanted. They weren't really building, the characters, the tactics. Nothing was coming along, but I'm right there with it. I think it was time. It needed to happen. We got to actually show that we know how to play some football down here in Cincinnati. And hopefully that starts when we find our new candidate. I'm excited. It's going to be fun to see what happens. Listen, give my arch rival Jose Mourinho a call. I heard he's free. He's ready to come to Cincinnati for sure. It's a gig he wants. Trust me. Call him up, Bird. I know you're listening. But yeah, I think that'll do it for On the Bounce episode 17. Like I said before, hit us up over on Twitter at OT Bounce, on our website, otbounce.com. And if you're listening to us over on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean, big thanks, first of all. And make sure you press that follow button, subscribe button, leave a comment, leave a review, do whatever you can, because it is greatly appreciated and helps us out a ton. And, tell your friend, tell your mom. Shout out to her.
Shout out to mom. So
we'll see you guys back here. And another thing, this is the only episode of the week. I'm sure you guys got that since we were already talking about, the week coming up and your key starters. But if you didn't know, if you're a little slower, this is our only episode this week. And we'll see you guys here back next week with the same format because there's another double game week going on in week 12. So we'll see you guys Wednesday. That'll do it for On the Bounce. JK, Brady, Jarvis, we out of here.